Hello everyone. I hope this message reaches you on a calm evening wherever you are watching from. Tonight we step into a story that begins in the darkness. Literal darkness. The kind that has covered much of Burkina Faso for years. A place where blackouts are not emergencies, but routines. Where business owners whisper, "I do not think we will survive." And where entire regions disappear into night because the power simply gives up. But something new is happening. Something quiet. Something strategic, and something powerful enough to shake the geopolitical map of West Africa. In recent weeks, mysterious convoys have entered Burkina Faso. Not ordinary trucks carrying cement or grain, but long convoys loaded with heavy machinery. As one witness described, no announcements, no ministers on television, no explanations. They arrived, they were guarded, and they vanished into storage. And here is where the shock begins. If these shipments are connected directly or indirectly to the nuclear project signed with Russia's Rosatom in 2025, then the Sahel is witnessing the birth of a new energy era. One that might unfold without the United States even noticing, until it is too late. Because in a region starved for electricity, nuclear power is not just technology. It is influence. It is leverage. It is positioning. This is the geopolitical alarm many in Washington have underestimated. If Russia secures a nuclear foothold in Burkina Faso, it is not merely building a power plant. It is building a long-term strategic anchor in West Africa, a position the US will struggle to reverse once foundations are poured and reactors rise. So tonight, we ask the question that is echoing through Africa news circles and intelligence desks alike. What exactly is Burkina Faso preparing for? In the shadows? And who stands to gain the most when the lights finally come on? Before we go deeper, make sure you stay with us because the next part may redefine how you see Africa's energy future. The story of Burkina Faso's energy struggle is not new, but the scale of today's crisis is unlike anything the nation has faced before. Less than a quarter of the population has reliable electricity. That means 3 out of every 4 citizens live at the mercy of darkness. Businesses shutting down without warning. Hospitals switching to failing backup generators, and entire rural communities spending nights in silence because their homes simply cannot hold a charge. For years, development plans, industry, agriculture, digital infrastructure kept collapsing against the same immovable wall. There was never enough power to build the future the people wanted. Darkness dictated possibility. Darkness dictated survival. Yet recently, something shifted. It did not begin with speeches. It did not begin with celebrations. It began with trucks. Not the kind of trucks you see delivering market goods. These were convoys, long, heavy, guarded. Witnesses described them as loaded with machinery that did not look familiar, escorted with the kind of attention usually reserved for military cargo. They arrived at dawn, at dusk, even in the dead of night. They were stored quietly, sometimes in restricted yards, sometimes in sealed compounds. No reporters were invited. No projects were named. This silence was unusual. In Burkina Faso, every new solar field, generator, transformer, even small upgrades are usually showcased proudly, publicized, announced. But this time, nothing. It was as if someone wanted the world to look the other way. People began recording with their phones. A truck passing through a narrow road in Ouagadougou. A line of containers rolling across the outskirts before sunrise. Heavy equipment disappearing behind tall metal gates. At first, these videos were curious glimpses shared casually. But curiosity turned into speculation, and speculation turned into a national question. Some viewers claimed the convoys were part of a solar expansion. Others insisted they were thermal units. And then came the theory that electrified social media. This must be connected to the nuclear project. To understand why that theory spread so quickly, we must go back to the agreement signed with Russia's Rosatom, first in 2023 during initial cooperation talks. Then in 2025 when Burkina Faso finalized binding intergovernmental documents. For a country drowning in blackouts, the idea of nuclear power was not unrealistic. It was salvation. Nuclear energy promised the one resource Burkina Faso had never experienced in abundance. stability. As soon as the agreements were made public, citizens began watching the horizon for signs of progress. They knew a nuclear project required massive groundwork, extra electricity, reinforced grids, stable generation, and heavy construction equipment. So when the mysterious shipments arrived, it required no stretch of imagination to connect the dots. This is where the geopolitical shock emerges. If these shipments, confirmed or not, are tied to nuclear groundwork, then Russia is gaining a deeper strategic presence in West Africa, far faster than the United States anticipated. In the eyes of many older American viewers, this is not simply an African development story. It is a strategic chess move. It signals something Washington has long feared: a new Russian corridor rising in the Sahel under the leadership of Ibrahim Traoré, a man who has openly rejected Western pressure in favor of sovereignty-driven partnerships. And while the public connects rumors, the government remains silent. No denials, no confirmations, just motion, just machinery, just momentum. The silence itself becomes the message. People on the ground feel both excitement and tension. For many Burkinabe citizens, watching these convoys is like watching the future arrive in pieces, metal frame by metal frame. A future where lights stay on, where factories do not die in the afternoon, where children study without candles, where opportunity is not something reserved for nations with hydro dams or oil reserves. But the secrecy also raises questions. Why now? Why quietly? Why so suddenly? And what is being built that is too politically sensitive to name? Some believe confidentiality protects the project from sabotage or foreign obstruction. Others think the government wants to avoid premature expectations. But there is another possibility, one that sends a shiver through geopolitical circles. Burkina Faso may be moving faster toward nuclear readiness than anyone predicted. These convoys, whether tied directly to the nuclear plan or not, are part of a broader pattern: grid reinforcements, generation increases, and strategic silence. A pattern that signals preparation. A pattern that suggests that the country is no longer dreaming of energy sovereignty. It is constructing it. What came next did not happen in Ouagadougou's streets. It happened in whispers, in embassy hallways, in intelligence briefings, and in the quiet exchanges of diplomats who suddenly realized that Burkina Faso's energy story was no longer just about electricity. It had become a geopolitical tremor, a tremor that could grow into a quake. The turning point arrived when satellite imagery circulated discreetly through regional security channels, showed new land clearings, reinforced perimeters, and a pattern of foundations that did not match any solar, thermal, or hydro plans previously announced. One official muttered, "This is not how you prepare for solar. This is how you prepare for something larger, something that lives for 50 years. At that moment, the world began reacting. Even if publicly, they maintained silence. Across African news circles, commentators started using language previously considered too bold even for speculation. Words like reactor groundwork, pre-nuclear staging, and strategic realignment appeared with increasing frequency. What had once been an online rumor now looked disturbingly plausible. Inside Burkina Faso, the air felt charged. Supporters of Ibrahim Traoré called it a historic turning point, proof that the country was breaking free from the cycle of dependency and constructing a future on its own terms. They shared the footage of convoys with pride. They spoke about a Burkina that will shine brighter than ever. But opposition voices, international analysts, and foreign diplomats asked harder questions. Why were foreign engineers seen at restricted sites? Why had certain materials been imported through indirect routes? Why were Russian advisors spotted more frequently near the Ministry of Energy? Why were roadblocks established near project zones without explanation? Then came the moment that pushed the tension to its peak. A high-level European intelligence report, intended for internal circulation only, was leaked to journalists. In it, analysts claimed that Burkina Faso was accelerating preparation for long-term Russian-backed energy infrastructure with potential dual-use implications. The phrase dual use was enough to set off alarms. Even though it often signals nothing more than high-level industrial capability, its presence ignited speculation, concern, and political friction. In Washington, senior officials held closed-door sessions, Prior briefings about West Africa had centered on security, terrorism, food stability. Suddenly, the conversation shifted. Now they were discussing nuclear groundwork, Russian influence, and the possibility that the Sahel might soon anchor one of Moscow's most strategic energy partnerships. One official, quoted off the record, reportedly said, "If this gets confirmed, the US has already arrived late to the party." Meanwhile, Russia responded with carefully crafted ambiguity. Rosatom spokespeople reiterated cooperation with partner nations seeking responsible energy pathways while sidestepping specifics. It was a diplomatic smirk, just enough to acknowledge involvement, never enough to verify the details. And as global powers circled the story, reactions across Africa became even more divided. Niger and Mali, Traoré's closest allies, expressed support. They hinted that a nuclear-powered Burkina Faso could stabilize the entire Sahel bloc. Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire expressed quiet concern. Their analysts warned of regional imbalance and new vulnerabilities if Burkina Faso became the first Sahelian nuclear-powered state. ECOWAS, already fractured, tiptoed around the subject. Nigeria privately feared losing its regional leadership. Senegal warned of unintended consequences. But the loudest reactions came from citizens themselves. Social media exploded with debates, panic, excitement, national pride, and geopolitical fear. The people were watching history move fast, too fast. Some said not fast enough. Others argued it was reckless. Then, in one unexpected televised statement, Ibrahim Traoré added fuel to the fire without ever confirming the rumors. He said, "Burkina Faso will not remain in darkness. We will not wait for permission to build our future. Whoever wishes to walk with us will join us. Whoever does not will watch from afar." Those words traveled instantly across Africa news channels. And though he never mentioned nuclear energy or Russia by name, the world heard the message clearly. Traoré was putting sovereignty above diplomacy, determination above caution, momentum above approval. For supporters, it was leadership. For critics, it was provocation. For international powers, it was a wake-up call. When the dust from the convoys settled and the international whispers grew louder, the reality began to take shape. Not in diplomatic circles, not in leaked reports, but in the daily lives of ordinary Burkinabe citizens. Because beneath the geopolitical struggle, beneath the grand theories about Russia, the United States, and the Sahel, there was a deeper human truth. Millions of people were desperate for light, stability, and dignity. For decades, civilians lived with rolling blackouts that arrived without warning. A family preparing dinner could lose power mid-meal. Hospital staff treating a child could watch the room dim to nothing. Mechanics, welders, bakers, barbers, workers whose livelihoods depend on electricity found themselves trapped between survival and shutdown. These were not isolated incidents. These were the rhythms of daily life. A mother once said on national radio, "We do not fear the night, we fear that it never ends." Now, with rumors of an enormous energy transformation unfolding, hope began to seep into conversations. It was cautious hope, hesitant hope, but hope nonetheless. For many citizens, the mysterious convoys symbolized more than machinery. They symbolized the possibility of a country where the lights stay on long enough for dreams to grow, where children can study without the flicker of candles, where businesses can expand without relying on generators that devour 4 times more fuel than profit. But as optimism rose, so did fear. Not the fear of change, but the fear of its cost. Where are you watching from? From Washington to Brussels, the silence coming out of Burkina Faso began to sound louder than the noise. Inside the windowless situation rooms where American analysts review satellite imagery, troop movements, and energy infrastructure shifts, the mysterious convoys created a quiet unease. Not panic, not outrage, just the cold strategic discomfort that comes when a small nation begins to move outside predictable patterns. And in every briefing, one name kept resurfacing like a tide: Ibrahim Traoré. For decades, Africa news rarely triggered red flags at the top of U.S. energy intelligence units. But Burkina Faso's sudden alignment with Rosatom paired with ground-level evidence of grid fortification, forced analysts to recalibrate. The data did not lie. Something big was taking shape, and it was not being shaped by Washington. To a superpower accustomed to having the first, last, and loudest say, this new silence felt like the rumble of an approaching storm. American strategists began asking an uncomfortable question. If Burkina Faso stabilizes its grid and unlocks nuclear capability under Traoré's leadership, what does that mean for U.S. influence in West Africa? The Sahel has long been viewed through a national security lens, a buffer zone, an early warning system, a space where American intelligence preferred transparency and familiar partners. But this time, the signals were blurred. The shipments were quiet. The cooperation was bilateral, and Russia was involved at every level. In closed-door briefings, intelligence officers described the partnership as a strategic wedge, a foothold allowing Moscow to expand political reach under the cover of energy development. It was not the nuclear plant itself that raised eyebrows. It was the speed, the precision, and the fact that Traoré was executing it without leaks, without public arguments, without the usual diplomatic theatrics. There was another fear, whispered, but never printed. If Burkina Faso succeeds, other African nations might follow. Energy independence is contagious. A functioning nuclear project would become a beacon, a model, a roadmap for nations tired of slow trickles of foreign aid and conditional partnerships. And the geopolitical balance in the region could tilt not through war or ideology, but through electricity. Yet even in their caution, American analysts could not deny the logic. Burkina Faso needs power. Its people need stability. And Traoré's pursuit of sovereignty through energy is not reckless. It is calculated, rational, almost inevitable. That made it even more concerning. A leader who seeks independence through infrastructure rather than rhetoric is far more difficult to undermine. As U.S. agencies watch the convoys, the grid upgrades, and the silent discipline of this national transformation, one question rises above the rest, haunting policy rooms from the Pentagon to the State Department. If this is only the preparation phase, what happens when Burkina Faso begins the real construction? Before you go, I want to hear your voice. Are you ready for the next chapter of this transformation? If you want more deep dive stories like this, built for clarity, truth, and impact, subscribe now and turn on notifications, because the next phase of this journey may shake the entire region.